Hey, I'm Danny, and I want to tell you what happened with my boyfriend Jason. I met Jason at a friend's party when I was 16. I couldn't help but notice how hot he was. Girls were hitting on him from every corner. But then, he came up to me and asked me to dance. Yes! The other girls looked so jealous their eyes were gonna pop out. The next day, we went out to the movies, but we didn't see much of the film. We were too busy making out in the back row, and oh my God, he was a good kisser. Jason and I started seeing each other like every day. He was so sweet, always buying me presents and sending me texts to tell me how much he loved me. Sounds like the perfect boyfriend, right? Only problem was, Jason could get really jealous. Like, there was one time we went for dinner. After the waiter took our order, Jason told me to stop flirting with him. I wasn't flirting with him. All I did was say thank you. But that was enough to put Jason in a bad mood for the rest of the night. When Jason drove me home, I told him he was being ridiculous. "I'm sorry, baby," said Jason. "It's just, I love you so much. I can't bear the thought of you being with another dude." It was hard dealing with Jason's temper, but I really loved him, so I always forgave him. We'd been seeing each other for about 6 months when we were in the den at Jason's house, playing video games, when this gorgeous guy walked in. Oh my God, he was hot. He was tall, with piercing blue eyes, and he was wearing a soldier's uniform. I mean, Jason was hot, but this guy was on another level. "Lucas!" yelled Jason, running over to hug the man. "Danny, this is my brother Lucas." I went over to meet him. Lucas held out his hand for me to shake, and I swear I felt like fainting when our fingers touched. Lucas told us he was home on leave from the army, and Jason said we should all hang out together. Jason asked if I minded because he didn't get to see Lucas much since he signed up. Did I mind? Are you kidding me? I got to hang out with a hot guy, and Jason wasn't going to get jealous. We had so much fun together in the couple weeks Lucas was home. We went to Six Flags, went out for dinner almost every night, and went to the movies. But the best times were when we were over at Jason's. And to be honest, some things got pretty steamy between me and Jason. Like, when the three of us watched TV, Lucas would kind of rub his thigh against mine or play with my hair without Jason noticing. This was wrong, but it made me want him so bad. On Lucas's last day of leave, we were all in the den when Jason remembered he was supposed to pick something up for his mom. He asked if I'd be okay staying with Lucas. Like he had to ask. Any excuse to spend time with his hot older brother. When Jason left to go to the store, Lucas came and sat right next to me. He was so close, our knees were touching. My heart started beating faster, and I bit my lip. I knew he wanted me, and all I wanted to do was kiss him. Thank God Lucas made up my mind for me. He leaned forward and kissed me passionately. Oh my God. I liked making out with Jason, but this was just wow. With Jason, I feel like I'm with a boy, but Lucas, he was a man, and he really knew what he was doing. Jason and I had fooled around a lot, but we'd never gone all the way. I didn't feel ready, but at that moment, all I wanted was to be with Lucas. Things started getting hot and heavy, but then we heard Jason coming home. Quickly, I straightened out my clothes, and Lucas moved away from me. When Jason walked into the den, I thought he'd know straight away what we'd been doing. But he just smiled and walked over to kiss me. "Did you two have fun while I was gone?" he asked. Yeah, I said. When Lucas went back to the army, he started emailing and texting me. His messages were so romantic, and sometimes they were his hot nudes. He'd tell me all about what he wanted to do to me when he got back home again. I really felt like I was falling in love, you know? I always deleted his messages. It would break Jason's heart to know I was flirting with his brother, and I did love Jason. Anyway, Lucas was away in the army. It wasn't like I was having a real affair with him or anything, we were just talking. But then it happened. Lucas messaged me to say he was leaving the army and coming home for good. I felt such a mix of emotions. I was excited that Lucas was coming back, nervous about what would happen between us, and worried that Jason would suspect something. I didn't have to worry. Jason planned a surprise party for Lucas to welcome him home. There were loads of people there, and there was no chance for me to spend any time with Lucas. In fact, he barely spoke to me. If he hadn't sent all those sexy messages, I would think I'd imagined the time we kissed. And then it happened. Lucas yelled out for us all to be quiet because he had something to say. He held out his hand, and some girl I'd never seen before stepped forward to take it. "This is my fiancée, Sherry," said Lucas. "She's the reason I left the army, and I want to spend more time with her." Lucas was engaged? I felt like my heart had shattered into a million pieces. I'd spent so long dreaming about kissing Lucas again, and he was with someone else. I know. I shouldn't have been upset. I was with Jason, and we had a good relationship. It's just that I felt like I had something special with Lucas, and I wanted to see if it would go somewhere. Oh well, I guess it just wasn't meant to be. Now Lucas was home, I saw a lot more of him, but Sherry was with him most of the time. It wasn't the same as before. We would go out on double dates together. The more time I spent with Sherry, the more I wondered what Lucas saw in her. She wasn't all that pretty. She was flat-chested and really dumb. She laughed at everything Lucas said, even if it wasn't funny. Lucas should have been engaged to me. It would be so much better for him. But then it happened. I was over at Jason's when Lucas walked in. He told Jason their mom had asked him to drive her to the store because her car wouldn't start. Jason asked me if I wanted to go with them, but I said no. This was my chance to talk to Lucas and find out what was going on. When Jason left, at first it was a bit awkward. I didn't know what to say, but then Lucas said, "I'm sorry." He told me that he'd only proposed to Sherry because she told him she was pregnant, but then she lost the baby. He felt guilty and didn't want to hurt her, but he'd been thinking about me all the time. "I know you're still with Jason," he said, "but I want you." That was all I needed to hear. We fell into each other's arms, ripping our clothes off. That first time with Lucas was incredible. He really knew how to please a woman. By now, Jason and I had been sleeping together for a while, but he wasn't great in bed. Lucas had experience, and it showed. After that, Lucas and I spent every moment we could together. I couldn't get enough of him. His body was amazing. So toned and buff after all his time in the army. I was head over heels in love. But then, I missed my period. I knew it wasn't Jason's baby because we always used protection, but Lucas and I weren't as careful. When I told Lucas, he was so sweet. He said he'd leave Sherry and we'd get married. He didn't want his baby to grow up without him. The worst part was telling Jason. I still cared about him, and he was my baby's uncle after all. Jason was devastated. I'd never seen a man cry before. I felt so uncomfortable. "I hope he cheats on you one day," he said. Lucas and I got married at the courthouse. It was only a small ceremony. Jason wouldn't come, and neither would his parents because they didn't approve of me running off with Lucas. My parents thought I was too young to get married and have a baby, so they didn't come either. I didn't care. Lucas and I were going to be together forever, but it wasn't long before things changed. I put on a lot of weight while I was pregnant. Lucas started making comments about how fat I was. Whenever I ate anything that wasn't a salad, he'd make snarky comments or snort like a pig. When our daughter, Mia, was born, I thought things would go back to how they were, but Lucas didn't want to spend any time with her, and as for changing diapers, forget it. I was really depressed, so I started to comfort eat, which made things even worse. Lucas threatened to leave me if I didn't lose weight, but his negative comments only made me eat more, and I ended up gaining 100 pounds. The more he called me names, the more I ate. I hated the way I looked, but I couldn't stop eating. It was the only thing that made me happy. After he left the army, Lucas couldn't get a good job, so he had to work as a barista to pay the bills. He started spending more and more time at work. He said he was getting overtime to pay for the baby, but whenever I asked him for money to buy formula, he said he didn't have any. I started to suspect he was having an affair, so I took Mia and waited outside his work one day. Sure enough, when he left the coffee shop, he was holding hands with another woman. They kissed before getting into his car and driving off. I raced home and started packing things for me and Mia. There was no way I was going to stay with someone who was cheating on me. When Lucas came home, my bags were in the hallway. "What's going on?" he asked. "I know you're seeing someone else," I yelled. "I'm leaving, and I'm taking Mia with me." Lucas begged me to stay. He promised he'd break up with the other woman and said he loved me more than ever. He took me to bed. We fell asleep in each other's arms, but when I woke up, I was alone. Lucas had left, and he'd taken Mia with him. He left me a note which said, There's no way I'm letting my daughter grow up with a fat pig for a mother. I had to go to court to get my daughter back, but I couldn't afford a lawyer. Lucas's family paid for a lawyer for him, and he said I was a bad mother who was a danger to our daughter. He won full custody. I know some people think I deserve it for cheating on Jason with his brother, but I've learned my lesson. I'll never cheat on anyone ever again. Now, I'm working 2 jobs to save enough money to hire a lawyer. I won't rest until I have my daughter back.
Hello, my name is Quinn, and I want to tell you about the time my mother and stepfather got a divorce. It was a really hard time for me, and I don't like to think about it often, but it's something that I feel like opening up about. Maybe then I can move on from it. When I was really young, like young enough not to even remember his face, my father left us. This left me in the care of my mother, Rebecca. She was a nice mother, but distant. We didn't do normal mother and daughter things. But I guess that's because she really didn't know what she was supposed to do with me. She had me when she was in her late teens and was still learning how to be a mother. After my father left, I think my mom did her best, but we were barely getting by. I grew up understanding that we needed to save anything that we could. And always be thankful for the little food that we had. It was hard, and sometimes we didn't have heat at home, so we'd bundle up tight, wearing winter clothes at night. My mom was distant for the most part. Never mean to me, but showing affection wasn't really her strongest quality. So, by the time I turned 9 and was old enough to look after myself, that's what I did. I'd make my own meals, do my own homework, and even look after my mom when she got home from work. It wasn't a great life, but I got used to it. Then it all changed. My mom started dating a new guy, Billy. She didn't bring him round at first, but when I finally met him, I saw that he looked a bit older than her. Though my mom was happy, so I was happy too. A couple of months went by, and their dating finally tipped over into marriage. I didn't think anything of it back then. I didn't know that their relationship was moving fast. I just saw how happy they were and that they loved each other. After the marriage, we moved into his house. It was amazing. I had my own room, which was bigger than our old living room. I ran around and was so happy. Billy even took me out to the store with him and Mom so that I could pick out my own bed. It was big with fairies decorated on the headboard. Then we went toy shopping and out to the amusement park. When it was just me and Mom, I wasn't able to do all of these things, so having a family day actually brought me to tears. Seeing me crying, Billy picked me up and carried me through the park, showing me other games and buying me a funnel cake. It was amazing. Years passed, and I loved our new family. My stepdad and I grew really close. Every time he'd have free time from work, we would all do something as a family. We'd go to the park and sit around for a picnic, go to the planetarium where he'd point out all of the planets and constellations, telling me about them. Billy told me once he never had a family growing up, so doing all of these things with us was what he dreamed about doing when he was a kid. I couldn't ask for a better father. Everything seemed so perfect. But that changed around the time I was 14. As me and my stepdad grew closer, I thought nothing could break our bond. But one day, after I got home from school, I saw my mom crying in the kitchen. I walked up to her and asked what was wrong. She hugged me tight until the sobbing stopped. Then she told me about my real stepdad. She told me how Billy would act nice and everything was okay when I was around, but when I left, that's when his real personality would come out. He would yell at her if anything was out of place in the house, then belittle her by calling her names and telling her how worthless she was without him. I couldn't believe it. With each word that my mom said, I could feel my heart break. I thought the world of Billy. He was a person that I looked up to and wanted to be like when I grew up. A nice, caring person who does things for others without hesitation. All of it was a lie. My mother wiped her face, begging me not to tell him what she said. She didn't want to lie to me, but she was also stuck. Not knowing what to do, I smiled at her and promised. Over the next couple of weeks, I didn't even want to be around Billy anymore. I would make any excuse I could to get out of family events. And when he suggested we spend time like we used to, I declined. I could tell that he was confused, but I didn't care. I didn't want anything to do with someone who would treat my mom like that. One day, Billy decided to insist on us going out for a surprise. When we arrived at the amusement park, I lost it. I could remember all of the good times I felt originally when I was a little kid, and to be brought back and reminded of who he really was infuriated me. I told them that I didn't want to be there. Billy put on a smile and said if I give it a try, he'd buy me all the funnel cakes that I wanted. I screamed that I didn't want anything from him and turned away. My mom calmed me down, and I decided to go along with it for her. Days later, my mom came to me and told me that she was seeking a divorce. She said that she couldn't put up with it anymore, and that she didn't want me to be angry anymore either. I was happy for her. She asked me to sit in on the divorce proceedings and comment on my stepdad. She told me it would help and make sure he doesn't try to take advantage of her. I was happy to agree. I wanted to help my mom no matter what. One night, I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs for a glass of water and saw my mom stepping into her shoes. It was pretty late, so I was wondering where she was headed. Before I could ask, though, she was out the back door. It was weird, but maybe she needed some fresh air away from Billy. It was the only thought that came to mind. I looked out the window, but she was gone. I thought she may have just stepped out for a bit, but it looked like she went for a walk instead. My mom must have really been stressed out about the divorce, or at least that's what I thought. The next night, I couldn't sleep again. This time, it was out of curiosity. Where did my mom go? And was she really okay? I snuck out of bed and down the stairs. To my surprise, there was my mom again, putting on her shoes and out the door. I had to know what she was doing. With my slippers on, I walked out the door and saw my mom creeping around to the side of the house. She was walking fast, like she was determined, and I tried hard to keep up. That's when I saw it. My mom was walking down the sidewalk until she came across a parked car. She opened the door and got inside the passenger side. There was a man waiting. As she sat down, she gave him a passionate kiss before they drove off. I was shocked as I walked back to the house. The next morning, I woke up and it was like nothing happened. My stepdad was sitting at the kitchen table, my mom was standing by the fridge, and they both greeted me. I tried to forget what I saw, but I couldn't. I even tried to come up with something that would make it make sense, but nothing did. I couldn't get it out of my head and I needed answers. The next time my mom got up and went into the other room, I grabbed her phone and checked the messages from the time she left the house. In the texts, there was one number from that time, a guy named William. I read through her backlog and my jaw almost hit the floor. There were texts from months ago, all talking about my dad, me, and her life. It talked about how she was using my stepdad for his money and how she was using me to control him. She knew that we were close, so she made up a fake story to drive us apart. The newest texts talked about the money she'd get from the divorce and how she couldn't wait to be with the mystery man. I was sick. I knew I didn't have much time, so forwarded the most important text to my phone and deleted the evidence. I couldn't believe what my mom was doing, but I didn't know what to do about it. Even though she used me, lied to me, and tried to manipulate me, she was still my mother, the woman who raised me. So even though I wasn't proud of it, I kept quiet. For the next couple of weeks, I played the nice daughter. My mom was still faking pain from how my stepdad treated her, and I kept my distance from him for a different reason now, because I was ashamed. Then came the sit-down. My mom and I got dressed up to head to the attorney's office. By the time we made it to the office, I was a little nervous. I knew why I was there, but it was still going to be hard. When we walked into the room, my stepdad was shocked to see me. I guess my mom wanted it to be a surprise, but I sat down, trying not to look at him. The proceedings started, with the lawyers breaking down everything each side wanted. Unsurprisingly, my mom was asking for a lot. Then it was her turn to talk, and each word made me cringe. She started with the same basic lies that she told me, but it was what she said after that that I couldn't believe it. She said how he beat her, wouldn't let her out of his sight, held her prisoner in the house, and so many horrible lies. I could feel my patience start to burst as I looked over to my stepdad, who looked astounded and sad. I tried to pull on her dress to get her to stop, but she brushed me off. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and screamed, "Shut up!" She turned to me, saying how they needed to hear the truth, and that's when I lost it. I pulled out my cell phone and pulled up the text from my mom's phone. If you want to hear the truth, how about this? I started talking about how I read the messages and that I knew what she was really doing. I could see her going pale. By the end, there was not much else to say. My mom was a proven liar. and my stepdad's attorney had a field day with the evidence. When it was all over, I walked up to my stepdad and apologized about how I treated him. I felt tears on my face, thinking that he would hate me, but he just gave me a hug. He apologized to me for having to go through all of that alone. Sadly, that was the last time I saw him. When the divorce went through, my mom was kicked out, and I followed. We moved into a small apartment far away from him. I knew my stepdad asked to be in my life, but my mom refused to let me have anything to do with him. I was hurt, but I don't regret what I did, and I certainly don't regret what happened. Even though I don't see my stepdad anymore, I wish him nothing but the best. It was only for a short time, but he was the best dad I could ask for. What did you think of my story? Please share with me your thoughts in the comments section below.